Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the channel, Simplify and Save. Thank you for joining us. This is going to be our paycheck number two review and budget. So it's time for our reality check now that we have received the second paycheck of the year. Before we move to that, though, I do just for transparency purposes, I want to finish up where we left off in the last video as far as how we ended up doing with our first paycheck. Um, so if you recall from the last video, we had all of our set expenses. And actually, let me just take a step back. So the way that these videos will go, it's actually going to show the gross amount first that comes in the paycheck, because that way we want to see exactly where every single dollar and cent is going. This then helps us be able to also keep track of stuff like our contributions to our retirement accounts or our health accounts, etc. So ideally for us, we want to uh, have a budget such that our set expenses, which includes also our debt, is always the same every single paycheck. Kind of gets us into a rhythm, such that really the only thing that we're making decisions on would be what we consider adjustable because, stuff like electricity bills or if you have a gas bill, I mean, that's not always going to be the same down to the same dollar and cent every single month. But again, ideally, what we're challenging ourselves is for our set expenses that we have gotten into a rhythm such that because we get paid bi-weekly, then it's easier for us to just kind of half those checks such that by time these particular bills come in, we always have the exact amount that we need. So anyhow, getting into it, um, again from the last video, it was because of the fact that right now we are prioritizing our emergency savings. Well, then that means that if we do have any sort of over or unplanned spend in this adjustable area, well, then quite frankly, we got to absorb it by like likely our eating out slash fun budget. So in this case, again, for the first paycheck, our electricity bill, it was actually our first electric bill. So, we just put $50 on it. We were a little bit over, not too concerned there. But one thing I will say is that you're seeing a lot of red on the screen, right? And I do think in looking back, likely because of the fact of when we first set up this budget, because we tried to set up a budget for the entire year, you'll see that the total set expenses for our budget was supposed to be just over $5,500. Now, I took a very conservative approach when I was trying to estimate, as you can see, what our taxes was going to be, right? You see 500 here, it's a little bit less, 200 here, it's a little bit less. 430 here, it's a little bit less. And even though you look at this and you say, oh, that it's not that big of a deal, but quite frankly, like I said, when you're trying to track every single dollar down to every single cent, then in this case, you might as well just to try to have it be with kind of round numbers. I was conservative, over conservative, that actually the set expenses ended up being about $300 less. And like I said, the majority of that did come from the taxes. But then also we did take, me and my spouse, we gave up, $100 a piece from our personal allowances because we did have some car registrations that we had to take care of, and we didn't quite, um, you know, plan plan for that in hindsight. But like I said, that was just our own error because typically you got to register your car every year. So we should know, yep, in January usually the car payment, the car registrations due. But anyhow, so be that as it may, let's see. Last time. like I said on the video, we had had the gift, we had the electricity, and we were teetering with about like 200 or so dollars, maybe $230 left of kind of flex, right? And so, as you'll see, let me get into the things that we did that really were not planned. So we spent 50 bucks. There was a plane ticket that we got, and we had a credit, but the particular new flight that we booked, sorry about that, we needed to pay some extra money there. Um, this was actually on the last video, obviously about the car registration. We did have some small purchases at like Target. Obviously now that we're getting into uh, YouTube and trying to every video improve on how we're doing these videos in our journey, stuff like Canva. That was a small amount, but still $7.50 is $7.50 that's no longer in our pockets. um, we did have some UPS, some Amazon purchases as well. And then otherwise, though, that was the kind of biggie. Now you'll also see that we did go over budget for the eating out slash fun. And so ultimately, what this shows, you and us here, is that quite frankly, even though we had this notation of, hey, we we made a commitment to our priority, and so now we need to execute. But clearly, during our first paycheck uh, in our budget, we did not execute because we ended up even going over. So not only did we have these extra expenses, we didn't take from this area to kind of go ahead and absorb this. Now, like I said, in hindsight, I think really what led us to do this is that we did know that we had this buffer up here from earlier where we expected to be kind of $300 down, and actually we had a quote unquote extra 300, right? And so I think that's why it's so important to think about your mindset, because again, you can have the most beautiful budget and know what you're supposed to do, but if you don't do it, it doesn't really matter. However, you got to give yourself grace, and all right, this is paycheck number one. And so, as you can see from the next tab, we've already moved on to paycheck number two. So, all I can say is that, we're obviously going to try to get better with paycheck number two. And at that point, that's all we can do, because you know what? By now, the money is gone. And so in this case, what you see is we were so for our actual, actually, I guess I need to change this because this isn't monthly income. This is actually biweekly income. So I'll change that for the next video for paycheck number three. But anyhow, so we ended up being over. We ended up spending more money, right? So this was our actual income versus our actual expenses. So we spent more money than what we actually brought in by $52.40. Now, um, in our case, we do keep a little, I guess I would say like a little buffer in our checking account. And so we were not overdrawn by this, but let's say that we didn't have that buffer. If we didn't have that buffer that we always keep in our checking account, well, then this would be a problem for us, because clearly either one or two things would have happened. Either the bank would have charged us, an overage free fee, assuming that they would have paid it, or again, depending on the type of bank you're with, maybe you don't have an over whatever, an overdrawn fee or whatever like that. I believe the accounts that we have, we don't do overdraft protection or whatever. So quite frankly, likely what would have happened is that this last meal that we had, which actually was, we went out to dinner last night, and yeah, so we spent $52.84. That included um, the the tip. And so you'll see that technically, if I would have removed that $52.84, we would have been right on track, right? So again, if I just take this out, then that goes down to 200, and we would have been right on. But again, like I said, there's no need to lie here. Um, I'm not gonna lie on the video because that would just be lying to myself. So again, we're over. And like I said, at this point, the past is the past. So we are starting fresh with paycheck number two. All right. So again, as you can see, the check date is for today. Um, how our banks go, like I said, we did already discuss this in the last video. Um, but because of how these direct deposits go, two of my banks actually do give us the money like 2 days early or whatever like that. But anyhow, so I did hear back from my employer because I was kind of asking them about this amount when I just did my rudimentary math. They explained the whole bi-weekly, it's some kind of additional fraction. It's not just like you have 365 days in a year, you have 52 weeks in a year, which, equates to 26 paychecks. Well, they do whatever they do in HR, and I don't quite understand it because again, when when I go and do this math, like if you do the math for 7668 times 80 hours, it doesn't quite match up to this, but it is what it is. In 2025, I'm being very intentional on just what I spend my time and energy on. So anyhow, anyway, really, as you can see, the gross pay is this just over 6,000, so $6,134.19. And then the first thing you actually do is you come over here to the pre-tax deductions. You can see the various amounts that come out for my health plan, the vision plan, the dental plan, and then in particular how my company does the match. So I contribute 8%, and then I get a 4% match on that because they basically match me 50% on the dollar up to 8%. So this is what I contribute. And then also this year, by having a high deductible plan, we decided for the family that we wanted to go ahead and get back into rather the health safety account. I mean, not health safety, the health savings account, field because we're Gen Xers, and we watch all these videos, and every generation has its challenges. That's not going to change. But we just really kind of sat down with ourselves, and one of the things that we talked about was obviously healthcare. Clearly, the um, healthcare expenses, they never get cheaper. Just like taxes, they don't really get cheaper. They just keep rising. So really, the intent there is for us to sock money away in our health savings account, and then we plan on using the health savings account um, in a way that I guess in the news it says a lot of people don't use it this way, but um, our provider is Optum Bank. So so right now you see that we're just, since this is a second paycheck, um, we're at $657.68 that's been contributed to our health savings account. And so what'll happen is once we reach $2,100, then we would actually be allowed to invest the health savings account money into the market. And so I already know that I'm just gonna, put us like in a S&P, 500, just something low cost, uh, not too, crazy as far as the volatility. Because again, really what we're trying to build this up for is for medical expenses later on when we retire. So the pre-tax deductions end up being $1,096.10. And so as you can see, I do kind of like this because the way this paycheck is laid out, it makes it very clear what your taxable wages are. So when you do the math to start at your gross and then take away your pre-tax deductions, this is then that amount that's left. This is then what how your various taxes get calculated. And so stuff like FICA, which basically is like your disability and Medicare, there's a certain amount, certain ones of these deductions, your pre-tax deductions, as you see it, it can come off of your gross amount, earnings, to then get to what the amount is that you have to, give up to them for supposedly later in life. I can tell you now, I understand this is just a personal opinion, but I'm not counting on any sort of Social Security uh, being there for me. When I do, or rather when, we do retire. So if there is any Social Security, it'll end up being a bonus for us. So hence why we're focusing on certain things. Um, and then obviously, Uncle Sam is going to get his cut, and our state is going to get their cut. So our employee taxes, the taxes that come out of our paycheck, ends up being about the same, so $1,085.68. And then I do have some post-tax deductions. These are some pretty much some extra insurance. But the one thing I was surprised about, pleasantly surprised, is that actually the costs for the long-term disability. So I picked the option where if I get hurt, obviously, well, not obviously, but if I get hurt, there's a certain amount of time that short-term disability, kicks in. And so if I'm like hurt longer than that, then I pay extra to get 60% of my income versus if I didn't pay this extra $41.23 out of each paycheck, then I believe I would get like maybe 50% of my pay or whatever. And right now we are a one income household. So I want to be able to bring in as much money as I can, if something was to happen to me. So anyhow, the last video, this was like double the amount in 2024, um, and so with this being cut, then now that took it down to just 68, a little bit over 68 bucks, and so that's why there was actually a change in my net pay. Because obviously post-tax deductions, then that means after your taxes come out, then whatever money you have left over then gets decreased by whatever else you have coming out of your check after the taxes have been posted. So anyhow, with that 3883.78 net pay that was left, then I use, the three direct deposits that I'm allowed to use. This first one is basically what we have deemed as our quote unquote expense account. So we put everything, in, well, not everything, but we put just about everything in this account. This other one that I still have with Capital One, there's some bills that still come out of this particular account. And so I'm in the process because I'm trying to simplify things as much as possible. So eventually, this 500 will go away. So that way, um, I want to have everything coming out of one account, um, which then, kind of filters into other stuff. Once we move over to the budget, you'll see how stuff goes to savings accounts or whatever. And then this 250, again, you'll end up seeing shortly on the budget. We do give ourselves a personal allowance of 250 bucks for each person. And then basically, in that 250 bucks, you can do whatever you want with it. But then you see the bulk of what is the balance. That's where we are deploying our dollars. So that's paycheck number two. Um, let's go ahead and now let's get over into the budget. So what I did was I came over here, and since the stuff like the taxes and everything, like I said, that was my own calculation before I actually got the first paycheck. So technically, you'll see what I did was I just copied and pasted the actual spend for the set expenses. I copied that, and now that became the new budget, right? Now, here's the thing. Usually, um, a storage rental is just once a month. And so the last check was, paying it for that last check on, the 10th paycheck number one. That took care of me for the month. But because of how the pay cycle goes and when this bill is going to be coming due, basically, I'm also putting the same amount for the second paycheck in January, because basically what I want to do is get us 1 month ahead. So that way our future budgets will be able to split this off. So in the next video, you'll see that this amount will look more like $55 instead of 108, or whatever. So you see, like, this is how come our internet and cable or water and trash, like, it looks very low, but really it's because by the time we get to the end of the month for the next month, we've got 60 or 70 bucks, already covered here. So anyhow, with that, so again, I expect obviously my paycheck to not change. I'm not expecting any sort of raise, this year. So that means that the set expenses, I'm expecting to be 5409 3038, and this will be a little bit different than this one. It'll be extra 200 bucks because remember, because the car registration came out and that was a big bill, then we had decreased our personal allowances last paycheck, but we're back to having the 250. I can do whatever I want, he can do whatever he wants, and then, like I said, everything else is working to the betterment of us, either current us or future us. So then, we get down to the adjustable areas. And so with this, you see this particular budget, it is a zero based budget and spend tracking. And so what that means is whatever your income minus your expenses, you want this particular budget balance to actually be zero. And it even has a little note that says the above total budget balance number should equal zero. In our case, though, we still have another $74.81 that's not accounted for as a quote unquote expense. Um, and so, you know, our budget sheet is telling us, okay, where do you plan to deploy this $74 dollars? Now, in our case, again, we are really focused on building up our emergency reserves. We do have a separate video on that as far as why. Um, but quite frankly, we had an emergency fund, and then an emergency happened, and so thankfully, we had that fund, and we used it. Now, we did also make some mistakes with that account as well, from a standpoint of all the money that was spent, it was not fully just on the emergency. Um, Quite frankly, we got a little flip it with delivery apps. So we were this thing down here for the eating out slash fun. That means even if that not only means you go into a restaurant, but also getting on Uber or DoorDash or whatever like that. So yeah, that 250 that was budgeted. We were way blowing through that, and we were using the emergency fund. Clearly, that's not what emergency fund is for. But again, it is what it is. You live and you learn. I'm not going to keep myself in purgatory, forever. We're not going to do that. And so anyhow, we are on our way to rebuilding our emergency fund. And again, like I said, we have the other video where we talk about our lessons learned and how we plan to not do what we did before once our fund is fully funded. So in this case, what I see is, since I see that we have um, $74.81, um, I do feel really comfortable just because of, like, for example, the gas in the cars. That $100 is working for us pretty well. Like I said, right now we're a one job household. And also, we don't have to travel far. So when we do drive our cars, the gas, um, does kind of last in our cars for quite some time. So I don't feel like I need to increase that. I don't feel like I need to increase the electricity budget. I think we are pretty good stewards, and, like, not just trying to leave lights on, um, even if we're not in a room for like hours at a time. So I think, 100, basically $100, because it's basically $50, each paycheck. I think $100 will do us just fine for the size of our, apartment. And then again, I don't want us to get out of um, this little cadence of our groceries and our eating out, because again, I just think it could snowball. So quite frankly, what I am going to do is, now I'm going to make this, so this one says $74.81. So I'm going to put that here. Let's see, $74.81. And so what I'm going to do is, I'm going to send this as extra emergency savings to get budget expenses to 0. Okay, so by me doing that, now this is really at um, 0 bucks. So that's basically the budget. Similarly, because of how, like I said, earlier on, how our uh, paychecks and checks go. Um, yeah, the money immediately. So the money gets direct deposited from my employer, and then I have. So like I said, so we saw from the previous um, screen on the paycheck, $250 already goes to one of the personal allowance accounts, and then similarly, uh, via the checking account, once the money gets deposited, $250 goes to the other account, and then the $826.30 has already been sent to the emergency savings. So again, from a standpoint of the pre-tax um, dollars that we already saw, again, that's already come out of the paycheck. So I'm just gonna copy these over, do a paste special only for the values. Okay, and then this is where we do have a change, right? So remember previously, the post-tax deductions was just over 112, but because the long-term disability changed, now we're at 68.63. Okay, so then this means this one is 68.63. And then, so, and yes, so all of the rent, all this stuff has already been sent over. So actually, I can copy all of here as well, because that has also been sent over. Pay special, values only. And the student loans, our student loans are actually 430, like $2 or whatever, but we just send them $500. Um, every bi-weekly. So that way we're actually sending over, like we're sending $1,000 instead of the eight, or I think it ends up being like nine, just a little bit under 900 bucks. So we are putting a little bit more extra to our student loans as well. And so, anyhow, what you see here, because of this decrease with our post-tax deductions, well, then clearly the budget for our set expenses is one thing versus what our actual expenses are. And so, what I don't want to do is I don't want to do what we did before, whereas we just kind of went hog wild because in this case we had like almost $300. Now, clearly we don't have almost $300 here. We're talking about like a $40 difference. But again, every dollar, every cent matters. And so, actually, what I am going to do is for the actual spend, I'm going to do a calculation that is then going to add that extra money. So, oh, oh, didn't do that right. Okay, so I need to put an equal sign here. And so now this is going to let me select that particular cell. We're going to let the computer do the math for us. So basically, this difference here, this difference here is why we have a difference there. So if I put that extra 40 bucks or so into emergency reserves, now you see my set expense budget and my actual spend will now be the same. So I'm going to make a notation, extra money from post-tax deduction decrease. Well, actually, I can just say this is from long-term disability decrease. Kind of make that nice and easy. All right. So I haven't sent that extra 40 something bucks over. So I will have to do that. But that's fine. Like I said, every little bit counts. And so now what is different with how we're going to be starting out paycheck number two is literally all of our set expenses, fixed expenses, we have gone through that money. So, um, and then, also you send this, but literally, let's just keep it simple. So all of this fixed money has been accounted for. So now that literally means when we get down to these adjustables for the next 2 weeks, because I haven't gone grocery shopping yet since, I didn't need to, because, I still have, I'm finishing up the stuff that we did here. So yeah, so this'll, I look forward, I do look forward to where are we going to be for paycheck number three review, where then we come in and we see, okay, how much was actually spent with groceries, eating out. Um, like I said, I'm really not too worried about gasoline and electricity because that just it is what it is. So I don't think we should be over budget in those, but these two in particular, um, I think is going to be the key for if we get this right now, then it should be easier for us to just um, rinse and repeat for the rest of this year. So January, this is the time to work out the kinks, figure crap out, and then yeah, so that's the plan. But at least for paycheck number two, it looks like I'll have like we'll have an additional about 100, maybe 110 that ends up going into the emergency fund because of what we're doing from having um, this decrease in the long term um, disability. So I think that about covers it. So anyhow, just want to again thank you joining um, joining us on our journey. I'm interested. Hey, what are you doing with your paycheck? Um, how is it going? Is it going good with the with your paychecks and how you're budgeting your money? Um, I want to celebrate, the, the wins with you guys. And also, like I said, because it's not all about, winning. Like I said, we're going to have challenges, we're going to have lessons learned. But it's all about, okay, when something happens that doesn't go according to plan, all right, then what are you going to do to get, back on track? So, like I said, definitely, please, if you like this sort of content, you know please like and subscribe to our channel. Again, in the comments, I'm ready to talk to people. How did your first paycheck of the year go? How did your second paycheck of the year go? Or if you're someone who gets paid weekly, this is probably like your third or fourth paycheck of the year. How's that going? Is your budget working? So yeah, just share your experience below. And again, I look forward to just continuing on this journey.